Hello, this is Dragon Tank 1400, and this is my top 10 and bottom 10 things in RWBY Volume 2. Now, I really liked RWBY Volume 2. It was great volume. It was actually kind of hard to find 10 things I disliked about it. There was a lot of great things as well, and a lot of okay things, but it was amazing volume overall. So, like the last list, I'm gonna start with my top 10 favorite things of RWBY Volume 2. And my number 10 thing is Team RWBY playing a board game. Now, the reason I like this is actually because I recently just got into board games and kind of designer board games as well. I'm still very noobish, but I recently got into it, and it was fun seeing them play this. It was a Risk-like game, but it had more components to it. It had these cards that did special effects. I would actually really love to see Rooster Teeth make this board game, and if they make it, don't just copy mechanics and just paste on the RWBY theme. Actually make it good, unlike the video game, which is not really that good. Actually make the board game really good and then put it out there. Spend some time, maybe hire a designer, really make this board game good. I want to see a really good RWBY board game. That would be amazing, even if it's just based on the one that we saw briefly in Volume 2. So my number 9 is Priya versus Team Cardinal. I think that's how you say it. Anyway, Cardin's team or whatever. She really destroyed them. It was no contest. She was fighting all four of them at once. It really showed how Priya is just above pretty much all her classmates. She's in a completely different tier than her classmates, basically, including Team RWBY and Team Juniper as well. Pretty much all of them. She's in a completely different tier. It was amazing to see that, and it was good to see Priya shine in a fight, because we're not gonna really see that. Spoilers, if you haven't seen season 3, we're really not going to see Priya actually shine and actually win in a fight other than this one, really. So that was my number 9, Priya versus Team Cardinal. So my number 8 is the food fight at the beginning of Volume 2. It was a really good fighting sequence, and I really liked the fighting choreography. Yeah, I can't even say that word right, but the fighting was really good. It was really good food fight, really creative how they use different foods to simulate their weapons and everything. I do wish John would have played a bigger role in it, but he's still learning. So I mean, it's only Volume 2. He gets better as the volumes go on. However, I would have liked to seen him more, but I did really like that opening fight. And for all the opening fight scenes so far, Volume 1 through 4, I think this one is by far the best. Volume 1 comes close with RWBY fighting those guys, those generic guys. But this one really takes the cake. Volume 4 didn't really do a good job. Volume 3 was definitely the worst fight, opening fight in the series, in my opinion. Anyway, so that's my number 8, the food fight. My number 7 is Team RWBY, minus RWBY, of course, so just Weiss, Blake, and Yang, talking about what Dr. Oobleck asked them. He asked them earlier, and this is going to be on my list in a little bit here, but he asked them why did they become a huntress, and just that I really like them talking about it with each other and kind of really exploring actually why they're becoming a huntress, and really their idea of becoming a huntress isn't what any of them really had in mind, particularly Yang. Anyway, so I really like that conversation, that interaction Team RWBY minus RWBY had. Which leads me to my number 6, and that's Dr. Oobleck asking Team RWBY minus RWBY why they became a huntress. From a teaching standpoint, this is the best thing a teacher's done in this series, pretty much thus far and beyond, really. I mean, you could argue Osmond letting RWBY go on this journey and stuff, letting Team RWBY go on this journey. However, I really think this one is key. Is like the best teaching moment. Dr. Oobleck really got Team RWBY minus RWBY, of course, so Weiss, Blake, and Yang, to really think about why they became a huntress. And it was really good character growth for all three of them. We got to see like why they initially got into it, and we got to see like Yang kind of her like character faults is that she just wanted like thrills. She didn't really want to be a huntress for the right reasons at all. She was like the furthest one, and then Blake was the closest, but she didn't really know how. It was just like, so Dr. Oobleck kind of asked the next question, and it was really good to see like RWBY actually asked Dr. Oobleck why he became a hunter, and it was really good to see like Yang pointing out that RWBY always wanted to be a huntress. It was like her calling, and that's really, we haven't really talked about it that much. We haven't seen it that much, but I really think the reason is because she's a Silver Eye warrior. So anyway, that's my number 6, Dr. Oobleck asking Team RWBY minus RWBY about why they wanted to become a huntress. My number 5 is Neil's nonverbal cues. Now, Neil does not talk. She's a mute. However, she has these nonverbal cues that I just think are funny, and particularly her fight with Yang, which I'll get to later. But I really liked her like nonverbal cues, that she can really communicate with people without actually saying anything. And since like, I don't know, it's like 70% or something like that of communication is actually nonverbal, that was actually really good to see. It was really well animated, I thought, and it's always a challenge. And I can't even really think of an important animated character that's a mute, because it's kind of hard to display what they're feeling without like actually the character saying how they feel. But I think it's really done well. So that's my number 5, Neil's nonverbal cues. So my number 4 is Torchwick's one-liners, or like just like him speaking. He's like such a funny villain, like, and like a lot of his one-liners, like little red, or I can't even like really say it the way he does. The voice acting is really done well. His lines are really thought out, really well written. Like anytime Torchwick speaks, it's like pure gold, to be honest, and it's really entertaining. His like speech to the Faunus's, the White Fang, how like like even Sun was like, where is he going with all this, because he was speaking against humans and he's a human, but then he got them to like listen to him and obey him. So I think that's really good. Like, so my number 4 is Torchwick's one-liners, or just anytime he talks really is amazing. My number 3 is Emerald and Mercury's their intro, how they were introduced in episode 1. I thought it was really good. It was really well done. Them coming into the shopkeep, and like even before that, Emerald like asking the one old guy where it is, and her stealing his wallet without even knowing it. You really get to display like what these characters are. You see that Emerald's more of a outgoing person, and she's more of a smooth talker, sort of like Torchwick in a way, but just way different. And Mercury's always funny, and he'll definitely be in like volume 3, but just the way like he's like, he stole the comic book, and he's like, I just like the pictures. So just them two together, their intro, I mean, they were kind of introduced at the end of last season, but this is the really time they actually get to talk. And this is where I really thought their intro was. So Mercury and Emerald's intro is my number 3. And my number 2 is just kind of the animation and backgrounds. Like the fighting animation is always good. Not all the animations, some of the animations is bad, and I'll get that in my bottom 10 list. But I always thought the backgrounds were well done. This almost made my list on the last season, but this one they really improved it all the way, so it's all the way up to number 2. So that's my number 2, animation and backgrounds. So my number 1 thing that I like most about Volume 2 is Yang versus Neil, and not because I like Yang, because at this point I don't. However, you know, eventually I will as Volume 4 goes on. I really like her character development. But here she's just kind of cocky, arrogant, and she's really not a good fighter. And I thought this fight really showed that, really demonstrated her flaw that her dad said in like Volume 4, is that she just gets angry and she like doesn't have any strategy when fighting. Like, there's a level of fighting where it doesn't really become about like what your combos, what your moves are. It really becomes like, oh, can you predict what your opponent's going to do and kind of move according to that? And that's what really Neo does here, is that Neo really like destroys Yang. Like, it's just not even a contest. Yang doesn't even get a single hit on Neo, and that's because Neo is in complete control of the fight. She knows where Yang is gonna attack, and she moves accordingly, and it's just brilliantly well done. It's just to the point that it's just like Yang really needs to like step up her game. And the fact that of course this is next volume, but the fact that she was displayed to be like the best member, the best fighter in Team RWBY was kind of stupid, because she's actually the worst in my opinion. And I think this fight actually shows that Neo just destroys Yang without even really trying. And when Raven gets there, Neo's just like, I'm out. So Raven's even at like a different level than Neo, and Neo's obviously at a different level than Yang. So it was really good to see that Yang kind of be defeated. Personally, it was actually a really good feeling for me, because at this point I don't like Yang, but you know, eventually I will. But it's also good growth on her, because maybe she won't be as cocky, even though we know she will be. But this is like the first time she gets, like, we see her get defeated, so maybe this is part of her like character growth. So that was good. So my number 1 is Yang versus Neo, and the fight was just done really well. Okay, so that was my top 10 things in Volume 2. Now time for my bottom 10 things of Volume 2, of RWBY Volume 2. So number 10. Now, I mentioned like animation being like my number 2 top thing, but there is some simple animation with how the characters move and get glasses and stuff like that, that it's still noticeable. And if it's noticeable that their animation's off, then it's not good animation. So that was my number 10. Some of the simple animation errors, or really like some of their simple movements. Like when they fight, they do a great job with the animation, but when they get a glass or whatever, it's not done as good. So that's my number 10, some of the simple animation. Speaking of animation, my number 9 is RWBY's strange hand motion. She's always putting her hands up or whatever. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, what is she, some kind of DJ person, or I don't know. I just didn't really enjoy it, and luckily they do away with this. But so that's my number 9. There's not much else to say. But RWBY's like strange hand movements, if you will. My number 8 is Weiss turning down Jean. Now, I like Jean and Weiss together. I like Jean and RWBY together, and I flip-flop about which one I actually like more together. However, I just thought it was kind of ironic and kind of stupid, if you will, that Weiss is turning Jean down because she thinks that Jean is just after her name and her money, which is not what Jean's after at all. And the reason Priya likes Jean is because Jean never saw her for like this out of reach person. He didn't even know who she was. So I just thought that's very interesting and very kind of stupid on Weiss's part for not really actually giving Jean a chance, if you will, considering that the reason she kind of turned him down was not true at all, since Jean is not like that. He actually really liked Weiss, and he didn't just like her because of her money or her name. But that's why Weiss turned Jean down. So, yeah, my number 8, Weiss turning down Jean. My number 7, and this one really bothers me, is RWBY wearing heels against Cinder. So RWBY sees something. She's wearing heels. That's fine. She's at a dance. She's not really comfortable with heels. Make logical sense for anyone with a half a brain to, she should just take off her heels and go after the person. She would fight way better without her heels than with her heels. So I just thought that fight between Cinder and Ruby was kind of anticlimactic, if you will. Considering that these two are going to fight again, we know they're going to fight again. It's been hinted at time and time again. Cinder's after Ruby, so they're going to have at least one more clash. Most likely two, but at least one more. But this clash was a little bit comical, and it should have been more. It should have. I mean, the fighting was still done good, but Ruby should have just took off her heels. It just didn't make any sense to me. So that's my number 7. Ruby wearing heels fighting against Cinder. So my number 6 is Yang versus Torchwig, and this is the fight where Torchwig's in the mech or whatever, and Yang kind of fights against Torchwig and tears off one of the arms, and I mean, she gets taken down, but at the same time, it displays Yang as a better fighter than she actually is. Now, Torchwig isn't a mech, and he probably doesn't know like how to operate the mech perfectly. He probably doesn't have that much experience at operating it. But at the same time, like, I mean, Yang ripping off one of the arms of the mech when, like, later on at the end of Volume 3, like, taking down one of these mechs was really tough. I don't know. It was just, I mean, Team RWBY, like, I do like that fight, Team RWBY versus Torchwig in the mech, but I just didn't like the solo part of that, of Yang versus Torchwig in the mech. I like that Torchwig took her down, but Yang shouldn't have done that much damage, in my opinion. Anyway, so that's my number 6, Yang versus Torchwig. My number 5 is Team RWBY not asking Team Juniper for help. Now, RWBY does ask Jean for help. Well, she tries to in the third act, really, of the volume. But in the first act of the volume, when they're trying to find clues or whatever, why would Team RWBY accept help from Sun and Neptune and not get help from Team Juniper? I understand from a plot point why that happened, because they wanted to develop Sun and Neptune's characters more. However, really from like a logical standpoint, like Team RWBY should have asked Team Juniper for help during that scene. And RWBY did give like she said she didn't want to get friends involved, but at the same time, come on, it's Team Juniper. Like, you should have asked them for help. Anyway, so that's my number 5. Team RWBY not asking Team Juniper for help. So speaking of Sun and Neptune, my number 4 is Sun and Neptune not really helping. So you have the first scene of them kind of helping in the first act, the first part of the volume, and they help a little bit, but then they just like take off. They don't really do any real damage to it, and they're actually just eating ramen or whatever they're eating. Anyway, so they don't help there, and then at the finale of Volume 2, where everyone's helping, they are like the two only person. Now, maybe they're in the background somewhere, but I did not see them even in the background helping at all. Even Jean took down like big Ursa. So I mean, why couldn't Sun and Neptune actually do something and actually help, even if it's just in the background? I mean, maybe they are in the background, but I completely missed it. I mean, like, every other character got like some action in there. We got to see even Emerald like take down a bunch of Grimm as well, and we got to see Coco and her team take down some Grimm. Well, not all of them, but it was really, I mean, everyone got their part except for Sun and Neptune. So why couldn't they actually do something? I mean, maybe they did off screen, but I didn't see it. So that's my number 4, Sun and Neptune not really helping. So my number 3 is barely explaining Cinder's powers. Now, what I say barely is that it's sort of explained by Glinda that Cinder uses dust in her clothes, but other than that, like, stuff is not explained. I don't even know. Like, she's able to change clothes. Like, what is her semblance? What is her power? Like, speaking of that, still did not explain semblance, but it was my last list, so I didn't want to put it on this list. But this ability to like put dust in clothes, and like how Cinder's powers work, or how even like putting dust in clothes works, like how are you able to use it? Like, there's a lot of things in the RWBY universe that is unexplained, and I'm fine with explaining stuff slowly, but I just think certain things need to be explained. Like, Cinder was introduced in episode 1 of Volume 1. Her powers were not explained, and that did not bother me in the slightest. But now that we got more of a display of her powers, and the fact that they sort of gave like they sort of tried to explain it. Oh, she used dust in her clothes. That doesn't explain anything. Like, really, like, if you're gonna like attempt to explain it, at least do a better job. So that's my number 3, barely explaining Cinder's powers. So my number 2 is the end scene of Volume 2, and that's Yang and Raven's like end scene. It's implied that they like talked about something, that they met, but like later on, it's like, did they meet? Like, what did they talk about? Like, was this just retconned? There's no explaining this at all. Like, Yang did mention that, oh, she saw her mom, she saw Raven, but like she didn't know anything about it. So and Raven said, oh, we have a lot to talk about, but it's like they didn't talk about anything. And I don't know, it's like, what in the world? Like, is this scene just retcon? Like, did this actually happen, or is this like Yang's dream? I don't understand this scene at all. Maybe they were gonna do it in like Volume 3, but they decided, oh no, this would be better saved for like the Mistral arc of the series. It's probably gonna happen in like Volume 5, to be honest. But that's like a different topic. So my number 2 is Yang and Raven end scene. Okay, so my number 1 is plain and simply Jean in a dress. Now, first and foremost, I'm a Christian, and I don't like cross-dressing. I don't like homosexuality and that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not like, if someone's a homosexual, I'm not like not going to be friends with them. But if they're a Christian and they're a homosexual, then I'll be like, okay, you got to stop doing this. Does that make any sense? Like, because as a Christian, it's clearly said in the Bible that homosexuality is a sin, and I just don't like people saying that it's not. Like, I mean, premarital. Well, if you're older, you know what I'm talking about, is a sin as well. But less on that. I don't like cross dressing, and though Jean did it like as it was done more in taste than most of the time. He did it actually to get a girl, which is kind of weird, but he could have easily done it without doing that, and he didn't have to say, I'll if you don't have a date, I'll wear a dress or whatever. Like, he didn't have to say that. Like, so my number 1 is Jean in a dress. It was really unnecessary to put that in there. I mean, people thought it was funny or whatever. I didn't like it. I actually don't have any pictures of it because of that. Anyway, that's my number 1. So overall, Volume 2 was really good. I just finished my bottom 10, and I already did my top 10. From like a Christian standpoint, besides the fact that Jean in a dress, which I just talked about, I thought this was a okay volume. The first act didn't really give anything in terms of morals. The second act was like really more focused on Team Juniper and Jean getting with Priya. So there wasn't really much there except helping out someone, really thinking of others before themselves. Like, Jean thought about Weiss before himself, and he thought about Neptune before himself. So it was really good to see that. But other than that, like the third act, really Dr. Uplet's scene, and I already talked about this, about why the girls wanted to become huntresses. Really, like, you should ask that question. Why do you want to become this kind of job, this kind of career? What is really the purpose? What is really the driving force behind that? As a Christian, I think that driving force should always be to give glory to God. No matter what you do all things for His glory. Now, if you're a non-Christian, that's a different story. But if you're a Christian, really, like, you should do all things for His glory, including, like, your job. Anyway, so that is my RWBY Volume 2 top 10 and bottom 10 things. Hope you guys enjoyed the review. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.